And there we are. I believe we're live. And I need to wait a few minutes for the this thing over here to finish up. I've got a 3D print going, and it's a little loud. Welcome, everyone. To anyone who is watching or will watch in future. Kind of the weird thing about all this is that whole aspect of future versus present viewers. Because this is a thing, and then it will become a thing. A very different thing later on. But anyway, it is Friday night. I'm an anime fan. You're all presumably anime fans of some stripe or another. And as we wait for the stream to work its way out, we will talk a little bit about anime and such things. Got some news tonight. I've got a review, a short review. Talk about comedy and anime. Got a dramatic reading from back in the day, which should be interesting. Giveaway as well. So start talking in the chat room if you want your chance to win the first disc of Martian Successor to Desco, the AD Vision release. It's a slightly worse for wear, but certainly a functional and effective copy. So there's a disc, there's the insert. Rather nice insert, actually. You get the chapter titles in the back of the insert. Pretty standard kind of release. So that will be going out to somebody tonight. If all goes well for you, maybe it will be yours. Who knows? It's been a good week for anime, all things considered. More anime on Netflix and all sorts of stuff like that. Let me just get something ready here, actually, for the news. Good. We can just get something kind of out there that I can get going here momentarily. Actually, I should. I need to put something underneath that. Let me look for. He needs a little something to rise. To go under that. Use a little block. Where's the little block? A little block, a little, some, let's try that. Just figuring things out here. Please stand by. Stand by, ion control. That'll work. Yeah, that's a little better. Okay, good. So I can get that going here in a little while. For some reason, the internet's a big problem. Let me just make sure. Got nothing else going. Oh, I can close out a few programs. Nothing that should be a serious problem, but one of those might as well. Yeah, that's done. That's done. Nice to have things done. I should let folks in the chat know. In the Discord. Let me just do that real quick. No. There we go. So that's done. And we still got video output low. Let me just see what I've got here. Yeah, that's stopped. Huh, that's weird. It's been low for a while, but I don't see anything that could be affecting that. Oh well. Let's go ahead and get started with the materials. Oh good, we've actually just kind of figured things out a little bit. So let's go ahead and do the news. Do something a little different again tonight, and we'll see how that works. Might be a complete and utter messy failure, but that's why we try things, right? Oh, I want to wait for this to end, though. We've got just a few moments for this to end, and you won't be hearing that nasty grind. And then we can start on the news. That's what I was waiting. So yeah, we'll be talking about screwball comedies and anime, which is, again, kind of a weird topic, but I think is interesting and useful to talk about. It's something a little different. but why screwball comedies seem to be such a popular genre in anime, and why that might be, and what people kind of get out of that. Oh, that's something I can. That's definitely a thing. I don't need to have that running over there, so stand by while we wait for this print to end. I can see it's on the last like few layers, so it should just be a minute or two, and then we can get started with the news and everything else. That is the way things sometimes are. So, hope you all are doing well. What anime are you guys watching? What's new on the anime front? We're getting down to the last month of the current anime season. So we're accelerating into climaxes at this point, I would assume, in a lot of the anime series out there. I've not been keeping up with pretty much anything this season right now. Not because I don't like it, but because there's other stuff on my palette at the moment. On my plate, so to speak. So, 20 seconds to go. There we go. So apologies for the delay, but we'll get there. Actually, I will cleanse my palate a little bit. I actually have in this corner of the world on my to watch list, like it's just sitting, the Blu-ray is actually just sitting right there on the almost on the top of that stack. So hopefully sometime soon, maybe this weekend, I'll get a chance to watch that. It's been really busy with other projects. You know how that is. Stuff just kind of tends to pile up. There we go. Excellent. Okay. Good. And in fact, 1 second. I will just turn this off. There's one less fan running. There. Okay. That's much better and much more quiet, I would hope. All right. Let's go ahead and get started with the news. And do that. Position. All right. Let's see if I can manage all this at once. And welcome back to the anime and manga news for the week ending March 2nd, 2018. A new anime is coming, very exciting. Let's see here. It's called Didn't I Say to Make My Abilities Average in the Next Life? Yeah, that's the title. Is being adapted into an anime of some sort. It focuses on a 10-year-old girl who discovers she's the reincarnation of a 16-year-old who abruptly died, and upon meeting God, asked for completely average abilities in her next life. As you might suspect, apparently that wish did not go exactly as planned. Meanwhile, the prolific anime scriptwriter Mari Okada, who made her name in shows like, let's see here, Anohana and Toradora and Black Butler, has made her directorial debut. Her latest film just debuted in Japan, and its name is, okay, let me take a breath. Sayonara no Asa ni Yakusoku no Hana o Kazaro, or Let Us Adorn the Morning of Farewells with Promised Flowers. Yeah. Apparently it's a fantasy set in a land where the inhabitants stop aging in their mid-teens and suddenly face a war. Film opened at number 5 in the box office, earning about $450,000 US. You go, Mari. Well done. And you go, Netflix. The streaming service has added 2 award-winning anime to its lineup. Let's see here. In This Corner of the World and A Silent Voice are now available in the US. Silent Voice, which earned 2.3 billion yen in Japan, is available either subbed or dubbed, while I believe In This Corner of the World, which won tons of awards, is sub-only. Moving on to a news story that frankly saddens me, but I don't want to have to report on this, but frankly I think I just do. Sorry, 1 second. Like I said, this is a bit of an unusual shift for me. Nobuhiro Watsuki, creator of legendary samurai shonen series Rurouni Kenshin, has been fined about $2,000 US equivalent, in yen, for simple possession of child pornography. Simple possession is possibly the lightest charge available for this. It means he wasn't distributed distributing it, and according to Japanese law, can be punished with up to a year in jail or up to about $8,000 US or both. So a relatively minimal fine for Watsuki, and here's hoping he learned his lesson. Moving on to slightly less disturbing news. Madchen, unfortunately, the next episode has been delayed by 2 whole weeks, so a bit disappointing to fans. The official website says this is to improve the animation quality on that episode, number 9 in this series, and the first 2 episodes will be rebroadcast in its place. Here's hoping that that doesn't lead to fewer episodes overall when you ever get a delay like that. Moving on, and finally, a bit of manga news. According to Japanese TV station NHK World, sales of digital manga volumes outstripped sales of physical manga volumes for the first time in 2017. Manga trade paperbacks brought in about $1.5 billion US last year, while digital volumes brought in about $1.6 billion. However, researchers note it was an unusual year. Several best-selling series ended without big series replacing them, and digital manga outlets were heavily promoted and discounted last year. This comes amid an overall 1% drop in manga sales compared to 2016. So, digital manga sales doing a little bit better than physical manga sales, but again, things are a little bit weird. So, that is all the news fit to print this week. Apologies for kind of the weird moving around, but we're getting things changing around a little bit here with the news. Hope this was useful to you, and hope I will see you next week. All right, that's the news. Transitioning back. Nobody in the chat room. Come on, guys. No one's going to win this this series if no one's talking in the chat room. That would be a disappointment, wouldn't it? All right, so let's move on. I think I'll go ahead and do this review now, because that is important and cool. And it's going to be a new review. So, yeah, I think it's review time.
These research studies explain how film experiences may help students learn increased amounts of new information, which is remembered longer, and which therefore may be applied efficiently to problem-solving situations as pupils progress from lower to higher grades. In the intermediate grades, the need for providing real experiences about things studied continues. Good teaching methods include the use of pictures, the chalkboard, models, and charts, usually before the learners turn to the pages of books for information. Some of the pupils can recall experiences of their own about pupas, larvae, and insects, and they can describe them to their classmates as they refer to charts like these. But for all the children in the classroom to really understand how things move and grow and develop from one stage to another, something else is needed. Something which can bring living experiences right into the classroom, experiences that are as lifelike as reality itself. What would happen if sound motion picture films were added as study materials in this classroom?
All right, let's get started with this rather weird one. Welcome to this review of the Chocolate Panic Picture Show. I am your geek archaeologist. This will be a short review of a rather weird show. Whoops, that's weird. 1 second. Oh my god. 1 second. Nope. Alright, gonna try that again. Hold on. Welcome to this review of the Chocolate Panic Picture Show. This will be a short review. I'm your geek archaeologist, and here I'm talking about this quite obscure, about 25-minute short film, kind of OVA miniseries thing, direct-to-video thing, purportedly made by Studio Gainax back in the early 80s. And this is a really weird little short. It is essentially a kind of stream of consciousness comedy about random characters having weird things happen to them. It's just kind of random, weird screwball comedy. And as such, it's one of those things that's going to be very different for different people. Some people will really like it, some people really won't. So just be aware of that. The comedy is just very different. As you can see, there's CGI elements to it, and it's kind of throwing things at you throughout the entire thing. Basically, it is just weird stuff. It's kind of experimental animation, all thrown at you all throughout the short film. Unfortunately, the main character is this kind of tribal African stereotype. So it is a bald, brown-skinned guy in a grass skirt with, you know, thick lips and just that whole stereotype, which is very uncomfortable for us now. But that is the thing it is. So you're going to be seeing that throughout pretty much this entire short film. The animation quality has got a lot going for it. There's a lot of movement, a lot of action, and a lot of experimental artistic styles to the short. So if you like animation as animation, I think this will be interesting to you. But it's also just kind of lots of weird, wacky things happening throughout the entire thing. As such, it's really hard to recommend this one way or the other. There is audio and music, but it's not really the point. The characters aren't really the point. This is kind of an experience to sit through and to experience the comedy and the jokes and so forth. So if that sounds interesting to you, I think Chocolate Panic Picture Show will be this interesting sort of wacky experiment. And it has certainly a lot going on, a lot of weird things going on. Experimental, artsy, but also screwball comedy. Lots of weird things going on here all at once. But I think that makes this an interesting little piece. So be aware of that. It is extremely hard to find. It has been fan subbed, but in general, you're going to have to dig to find the Chocolate Panic Picture Show. Also partly, of course, because of that sort of strong racial stereotype, which is kind of hard to get past for a lot of people. So be aware of that. But that is certainly a thing that exists. I think it's interesting. I think it is. It rewards focused attention. It rewards thinking about what they're actually doing in the short film, but it's also kind of random. So I predict this is going to be one of those things where people either hate it or they think it's brilliant. One of those sorts of things. So be aware. Again, that's my quick review of the Chocolate Panic Picture Show. Hope you found that useful. Hope to see you here again next time, and where we will be digging deeper into more anime. All right, that is the quick review of Chocolate Panic Picture Show. Very simple. Not much to say there. Again, it's a screwball comedy. There's not much else going on. Okay. Quick reminder, get in that chat room if you want to win a copy of this. Hey, Game Escape. Good to see you. Glad you could join us. I need to prepare a bit for the dramatic reading before we get into everything else. So I'm going to give you guys a little clip. By the way, remember that clip of that Korean anime film from last week that I showed? I got a copyright takedown notice, or copyright, notice on that. And I know that's in the public domain. Like, it is very clearly marked in archive.org as public domain. So I actually submitted a dispute on that clip. We'll see what happens. YouTube warns you that if you kind of fraudulently claim that things are not public domain, they will shut down your YouTube account entirely without warning. Just kill it. So we'll see if that happens. Here's hoping that's not a problem, but we will find out. So in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and show you. I don't know quite what that is. Ah, yes, that's a bit of the Superman cartoon. Instead of that, I will show you a bit of my one of my panels. Now, again, imagine you're 8 years old. There's been very little in the form of animation for you, in the form of entertainment in general for you, and that entertainment you've been getting has not had the impact of Hollywood's evolution of film. So you go down to your local manga rental shop, and by the way, yes, this is how you got entertainment back then. You had to rent it. You couldn't afford to buy it. And you open this book called New Treasure Island. Reading in the manga way. You have this young man in a car who's coming towards us. we see a puppy reflected in his eye, and then he stops, and fortunately the puppy's okay. He goes out, picks up the puppy, drives off in his car so fast that the background is blurring. I've read interviews with folks who were kids at the time who said they realized they got to that last panel, they realized they'd been holding their breath for the entire time because they had not seen this kind of dynamism in manga. This sense of drive. Also, this was set a couple of dozen years in the future. That is a Japanese teenager who can afford a car. And it's like 1947 at this point. Hello! No one was assuming that in Japan at the time. So very forward-thinking, very positive about the future. That manga was written and drawn by a young man named Osamu Tezuka, seen here much later. He was 17 years old when he drew that. And this had a profound effect, eventually, on manga. Tezuka had this advantage that he was 17 years old. He didn't have any of the baggage, but any of the existing mangaka and the existing creators. So nobody was looking at him and wondering what he'd done during the war. And he was creating these very forward-thinking, very positive stories. And he became very important a little later on. Meanwhile, as time goes on, Japan begins to rebuild. And some folks working in film start looking to the West and saying, hey, Walt Disney's doing really well for himself. We should emulate that. So they formed this company called Toei Doga, now Toei Animation. They make Dragon Ball and One Piece, lots of other things. Specifically to copy the Disney model. We're going to make a new film every couple of years, an animated film that is a musical that adapts a fairy tale, but it's going to be an Asian fairy tale, a Western one. And so a few years later, they released this film. And I say this film because, my gosh, this has gone through a lot of different titles. These are all official English titles, by the way, for the years. I call Legend of the White Serpent. It is the first full-color animated film made in Japan. Again, I consider this not quite anime yet, because while it is not copying Disney in its art style, it is copying Japanese and Chinese woodblock prints in its art style. And it uses full character animations. It is a musical, it has cute characters in it. There is nothing particularly anime about it, just happens to be animated in that style. It's one of the issues Toei had over time, is they were very still, mired is the wrong word, they were still very much in the mindset of copying the Disney style. They started bringing in Osamu Tezuka, because he was getting increasingly popular, to work with him on their films. They would adapt one of Tezuka's stories, they ended up doing that. And so he started getting involved and seeing how they made animation. He was like, that's a really neat idea. To make animation, I want to do that. Up until that point, he'd really been just a manga creator. He basically changed his life goal to form an animation studio. And he spent years and years and years producing huge amounts of manga, specifically to build up a financial war chest so he could open an animation studio, because he knew how expensive it was. Tezuka produced hundreds of thousands of pages of manga. His output was ridiculous. And a lot of it was just to fund this dream. So that in 1963, he could produce an adaptation of his most popular character, Astro Boy. And this is where I believe anime begins. And we're back 1 second while I get something ready here. I just realized an improvement I can make to the dramatic readings, which would be nice. Yep. Copy that, and I can put that in here, so I can actually have this to look at. Hopefully. Oh. Yep. good to go. Yeah, well, and we're having big wind problems here right now. Folks are having problems with video quality, and so we are, I would not be surprised if the internet is just bad tonight. That is totally to be expected. I am recording all this at what should be essentially full quality, so when these go up on YouTube, they should be, you know, good to go. So let me just, oops, paste this in here. Just a moment while I get this going. One of the things I just, oh, no. That's weird. That's not what's in there. Oh, right. Oh, well, that's okay. So we can actually do that? Can we do that? Yes, we can. Good. All right. Yay. Give this a try. All right, let's do a dramatic reading, because those are so much fun. Got a fun one for you tonight. Little Arthur Dente. Yes, I can live with that. Towel. Never forget your towel. All right. Oh, but I need to have that going. There we go. All right. Welcome back to a dramatic reading of an anime post from 20 years ago. Let me explain this. This is based on a post about Neon Genesis Evangelion scripts. This is originally written by RB back in 1998. Originally based on a post by this person named Doug Bradley, who wrote, "Help! I am in need of Neon Genesis Evangelion EPs 25 to 26 scripts. I would appreciate it if anyone could let me know where to find them. If so, please email me," and he puts an email address, which I'm not going to put here. And here was the reply. FYI, the last couple episodes will never be released in Japan or abroad, except for one company who will release these two EPs, namely Dynamic Visions in Belgium. Also sells their releases in the Netherlands, France, and Italy for all I know. If you have the TV recordings from EP 25 and 26, hang on to them, since they are going to be rare. From now on, only the movies will be released instead of the original series. Right? If you're wondering where I got the info and if it's reliable, let me put it this way. If it got any closer to the source... Sorry. 1 second. Ah! Damn it! Alright, sorry. Oh, a thing popped up and took over the entire screen. I'm going to have to do that over from scratch. That's really annoying. That just completely screwed up. And now the app is crashed. That's fun. It was fun, but it wasn't really going well. Okay. We'll do it one more time. We'll get there. Kind of breaks the drama to do it twice, but what can you do? Okay. Welcome to a dramatic reading of an anime post from 20 years ago today. This is in regards to Neon Genesis Evangelion scripts. Doug Bradley originally wrote, "Help! I am in need of Neon Genesis Evangelion EPs 25 to 26 scripts. I would appreciate it if anyone could let me know where to find them. If so, please email me," and he puts his email address, but I'm not going to put that in here for obvious reasons. FYI, the last couple EPs will never be released in Japan or abroad, except for one company who will release these two EPs, namely Dynamic Visions in Belgium. Also sells their releases in the Netherlands, France, and Italy for all I know. If you have the TV recordings from EP 25 and 26, hang on to them, since they are going to be rare. From now on, only the movies will be released instead of the original series. If you're wondering where I got the info and if it's reliable, let me put it this way. If it got any closer to the source, it would be the source. Yes, it is very reliable. Johnny. Yes, very reliable. Very reliable. Okay. Hey Wong, Derpy, Game Escape, Happy Console Gamer, good to see you all. Taking a little while for everything to kind of stabilize and get working. Like I said, we've had some really high winds here all day, up to 60-mile-an-hour winds, which is a little scary. So my internet's been kind of coming in and out. I know Amazon Web Services came down, went down for a while today. Hey, spin to win. So probably some poor engineer got fired. Yeah, so things are kind of chugging along. We'll get there. We'll get to everything eventually. We'll get everything done, for better or worse. So let's move on to the discussion, and then we'll do the giveaway, because I want to do that. And then we will be doing Talking No Cooking tonight. I want to make macaroni and cheese again with a twist. I want to try making macaroni and cheese kind of from my head and see how that works out. So we'll see if that is effective tonight. Winds and rain in the New York City area. Yeah, some of my friends in Boston are having the same issue. So, kind of scary. All right, let's do the great debate. This will be kind of a free-form discussion. And hopefully we'll have a good time with this. Let me just turn this off. Gotta remember that, but that's an issue with that thing. All right, so let me just, before I do that, I need to pop up the chat a little bit. Make it a little easier to see. There we go. Welcome to the great debate, where today we are talking about the question of screwball comedies in anime, which may seem like a strange topic, but I've noticed there are a lot of these really oddball comedies in anime going back years and years and years. Not just comedies, not just funny shows, but this idea of really over-the-top comedy, of almost nonsensical comedy, has been a big thing for a long time. You look back to Nichijou, Lucky Star, Azumanga Daioh, Penny Pony Dash, Excel Saga, all these really weird over-the-top comedies. And so I'm wondering why this is a reasonably popular genre in anime, because not only do they exist, they seem to be among the most popular anime series the year they come out. They all seem to soar in popularity when they come out. And obviously there are other screwball comedies that don't work so well. But, given the fact that, maybe a fantasy series, explodes that year, or maybe a sci-fi series, why are screwball comedies so effective in anime? I think one of the reasons has to do with the fact that in animation you can do anything. So a character can explode, a character can, have anvils fall on them, and that totally worked. Looney Tunes were certainly screwball comedies back in the 30s and 40s. And indeed, early animation, well, the animation of the early 20th century, shall we say, the Looney Tunes and Disney stuff very early on were definitely screwball comedies. The very early Disney stuff, the Silly Symphonies and such. So there's certainly a long tradition of that, and that certainly might inform it. And I think that also just speaks to the strengths of the medium. But it seems like whereas Disney and DreamWorks and other things have kind of moved on from that, you don't really see a lot of screwball comedies coming out in that sense of really over-the-top, anything can happen kind of a comedies. But you certainly see them in anime all the time. So I'm wondering kind of where that's coming from. Why that would be in anime in particular. It's also probably partly a little cultural. Where is that enough adjectives on top of that? Probably partly a little. Who knows? Where there is certainly a tendency in Japanese culture to occasionally produce just really oddball things, right? And so you can, that kind of wacky Japan concept, which is, as we've said before, a little demeaning, but there is a long tradition of screwball comedy in Japan. Spin to Win in the chat room makes a great point that comedies are easier to write in the sense that while good comedies may be hard, comedies can always fall back on gags. That's an excellent point, I think, where, comedy is hard, but kind of the average comedy can always just be weird random stuff happening. Yeah, with animation you can, as Harry Partridge said, exactly. Rick and Morty is a great example, where that is definitely a screwball comedy, although it's I would say slightly more grounded than the average, well, maybe not. I mean, I would say, yeah, Rick and Morty is definitely that kind of weird, bizarre screwball comedy. It's very much in that Nichijou, Azumanga Daioh tone, where, they're not going to suddenly change Rick's gender for the rest of the show at, tomorrow. But it's definitely a show where you feel like anything can happen at any moment, and that's one of the strengths of that, and that is a medium. It's actually an interesting point when you think about it, that certainly Disney and DreamWorks and other big budget things have moved away from screwball comedies, but certainly other American animation has not. Archer is basically a screwball comedy, right? Would Captain Tylor, Game Escape asks, count as a screwball comedy? Not sure, but I found humorous at points. It's a good question. I would say not quite a screwball comedy, but definitely a large comedy. A big comedy where big stuff happens, where the comedy can be very broad comedy, I would say. Kind of like The Jerk or a lot of Steve Martin comedies, where it's not that anything can happen, but it's definitely a little weirder than your standard anime series. And yes, you're right, Spinduin. Also, with the comedy, you can just kind of go for it. It requires a lot of care and attention to detail to make a very serious, grounded show like a Witch Hunter Robin or a Bebop. Well, Bebop can be comedic, obviously. Or Razafon or Evangelion, things like that. You just have to be very consistent. Those characters have to look the same and behave the same, whereas comedy can just kind of be wacky and bounce all around, and the character concepts don't have to be as strong. It's one of the reasons why I think, something like Azumanga Daioh, for example, which actually, let me give you an example of that. So for those who don't know, Azumanga Daioh was one of the big screwball comedies of the 2000s, focusing on a group of high school girls. And really fun thing, it's now available in a single large volume set, originally released in 4 volumes over here in America. And it is a 4-koma manga about girls in high school, basically, and characters kind of doing their thing in high school. Actually, those are most of the teachers. And let's do the more of the, yeah, there we go. So you have just these various girls just kind of doing their thing in there. Excellent translation on this, by the way. If you're looking for, it's really hard to translate comedy, especially this kind of dry Japanese humor. Not necessarily Japanese humor, but the very dry humor of this. They did a really good job of making those jokes land. And so this is a good example of something where it's about high school girls. Aliens don't invade, although there's some weird like dream sequences and things like that. But it's still very much this over-the-top weird comedy thing. And so in this case, though, those characters do have to be pretty consistent over the course of the story, because it is, to a great extent, comedy based around their personalities. Compared to something like Nichijou, where the personalities are consistent, but you can have wackier things happen, and especially side characters don't have to be as well defined in terms of their characters and their personality right? That's an interesting point there, Spindowin. Keep on talking. You don't have to shut up. You're making great points. He mentions the creator of One Punch Man, and the Good Fairies guy, where that definitely, it's one of those things where you can just kind of make a thing. You can do something and throw it out there, and it's easier to be independent and control of something like that because of, like you say, and I think it's a combination of what you were saying, where not only can you throw things out there because you don't have to spend 6 months building your world and establishing all your character relationships and so forth and making sure that your story is well formed over the 2 years it's going to run. You can just kind of throw a thing out there, and if it works, great, and if not, try something else, and eventually find the thing that is really successful. So Liquidus brings up the fan service comedic harem series, which I would classify as, again, sort of a broad comedy, where it's not so much screwball, although there's certainly a screwball aspect to it. It's an interesting point, actually, that the harem concept, I think, has gotten less screwball as time goes on. Certainly Slayers and Tenchi Muyo and those things, those harem series from the 90s, Saber Marionette J, were more screwball, closer to screwball, than your modern harem anime series, right? So I think that's kind of worked its way out of that genre in general. And I think part of that is because of the success of the moe and harem formulas, where because you're merchandising those characters so strongly and so heavily, you don't want to be constantly making fun of those characters. You want them to be consistent and to be somebody that the audience can kind of latch on to and can care about. Whereas, and obviously you can care about a goofy character. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that it's a different kind of caring. You can really, I find Osaka from Azumanga Daioh. Let's see if we get a good. Osaka's probably on that. Yep, yeah, there's Osaka right there, who's kind of the airhead of the group. And she's a great character, one of the most popular characters in the series. Very goofy and very, one of the more screwball characters in that sense. But if you got, so that's a character you can absolutely make fun of and laugh at. But when you've got a series where you want the viewer to have that emotional connection, to really feel bad about the character, want to protect them, and want to be a girlfriend or be a boyfriend to that character, want that character to be your girlfriend, you don't really want to be Osaka's boyfriend. She's just a little too much of an airhead for that. So that definitely, I think, has had an effect on harem as a genre and made it less goofy, which personally I mourn, in the sense that I liked that goofy aspect, that over-the-top aspect of early anime series, not early, but 90s anime series, where you could have an alien crash land, the Urusei Yatsuras, the Ranma 1/2s, which I would call Ranma 1/2 a screwball comedy, because all sorts of weird stuff happens there, right? That's another interesting point. Good point, Van Riley, excuse me. Japanese TV in general loves wacky comedy, Van Riley points out, like the crazy Japanese prank shows. It's a great example. Now, I would argue we have a version of that in our late night television. Much of late night TV is about some form of, if not direct pranks, but definitely kind of doing weird stuff late at night. But you're certainly right that Japanese TV has a lot of that, and there's also like the weird, I shouldn't say weird, but the wacky Japanese game shows, right, is definitely trades on that idea. And even also the comedy. A lot of the stand-up comedy is kind of nonsensical gag comedy, as opposed to, there's not a lot of political comedy in Japan. There's not a lot of serious, if you will, issues-based comedy in Japan. And that's just because comedians occasionally try, but they exist out there, but it's never been a huge, a major force in the comedic world. And part of that is, I think, kind of political in the sense that wacky comedy is safer. You're not going to, nobody's going to bristle at wacky comedy the way they'll bristle at a political joke or a religious joke. So that just has kind of become the default over there. So that's a really, really interesting point. And you contrast that with movies. You don't see a lot of screwball comedy anime movies. Right? They tend to, you can have comedies, you can have mecha, all sorts of stuff. But they tend to be quite a bit more serious. Or certainly not as strong on that whole aspect of things compared to TV. And TV has a lot of those wackier comedies. So that tells us that wacky comedies aren't quite as safe. That a wacky comedy, and we certainly know this kind of intuitively, if you make a big over-the-top wacky comedy, it might do well and it might crash. There's certainly been plenty of wacky comedies that people are just like, not my thing. Right? And then you occasionally have a pop team epic that just explodes. And everyone likes it. But then last season we had Urahara, which is this really weird concept blending a bunch of different things all together of fashion culture and sci-fi and cute girls, moe, and all sorts of things, which I thought was really interesting, and it got some attention, but in general just kind of didn't go anywhere. And I think that's a really interesting problem, is that wacky comedy has that kind of that chance of failure that is somewhat different than other genres. Obviously, a drama can fail as well. But I think, I would argue that a drama might be easier, I don't know. Is a comedy easier to merchandise than a drama? Is it easier to sell plushies of a comedic character? I would argue yes. I would argue a comedy actually is easier to sell because even if somebody doesn't like the comedy, they will recognize the character. Whereas if you don't care for a dramatic concept, you're not going to watch the show at all. So I think comedy is easier for people to at least try. People will catch an episode of a comedy and try a comedy more than they will try a drama, I think. And perhaps that's another reason why comedies are so successful in anime, especially screwball comedies, because it's easier to merchandise. You can throw, and also to that point, you can throw these characters on anything, and it doesn't matter, right? You can have elements of these characters being thrown around, and they could be a plushie, they could be a figurine, all these things, and very few things feel wrong for a comedy character. A dramatic character, you think of a serious anime series of a Steins Gate, and you're not going to have a lot of fan servicey, merchandise around those characters. You can have a little, but it's a little harder to do because it's not the tone of the show compared to a screwball comedy where you can do kind of fan servicey things, and you can do kind of weirdly dramatic things, ridiculous things, throw weird outfits on the characters, and that will work. So I think those are some really good points there. So what do you guys think about that? What are some screwball comedies, chat, that you guys have really enjoyed and had fun with? Maybe we can tease out what's remarkable about those shows. Again, I think of Azumanga Daioh, I think of Lucky Star, both of which are a little more grounded. They are set in high school with Japanese girls. Aliens don't invade from anywhere. Pani Pony Dash is kind of my go-to for screwball comedy, where it's really ridiculous and really over the top, and you can have kind of aliens invading. But, and for some reason that works for me because there's an attention to, because it's also partly a parody, right? And that's also an interesting element of all this, where Pani Pony Dash is having fun with anime stereotypes. It's having fun with its characters and how characters are interacting with each other and goofy stuff like that. Whereas, I think a lot of the really over-the-top comedies that I don't like are ones where literally anything can happen, and so there's no grounding to it, right? And yeah, you're absolutely right, Liquidus. The thing about comedies is you don't have to have canon. Character can die in one episode and show up in the next. Although, interestingly, that doesn't seem to be a thing as much in anime. You don't get that level of bizarreness except in, like, Excel Saga, for example, which is, again, one of the canonical screwball comedies of the 90s, where the characters would die at the end of every episode, or sometimes multiple times per episode, and then they'd just be resurrected and come back. And it was parodying, you know, lots of different genres of anime and all sorts of stuff. So that is one of the that's an interesting thing, that you don't seem to get quite that level of weirdness with screwball comedies in anime, it seems to me. So yeah, that is kind of interesting. But I seem to like more grounded screwball comedies, and I wonder if that's also an aspect of it. I wonder if people are generally kind of more excited by those kinds of things. I don't know. Gintama, absolutely screwball comedy. You're absolutely right, Derp. Cromartie High School, definitely screwball comedy. Both cases of shows that are kind of rooted in a basic premise, but goes off in weird directions. Ranma 1/2. Level E, interesting. I have no exposure to Level E, so I can't talk to that one, I'm afraid, wrongly. Yeah, so Ranma 1/2 is also interesting because that is a good example of a show where really weird stuff happens and is almost always resolved within one episode. But it is a little more character focused. You know, Rama doesn't really change much in terms of his personality or her personality as the show progresses. A little bit maybe where, you know, the relationship between Ranma and let's say Kagame. Ranma and the girl he's focused on. Gosh, that's annoying me. You know, they start very separate, and then as that franchise progresses, they get a little closer in the sense of protecting each other, you know, a little bit more than in the earlier episodes. But in general, that is a series about very well-defined personalities, I would argue. Not having seen huge amounts, right? Ping Pong Club. I have not seen Ping Pong Club, but I've seen clips of Ping Pong Club. It's a great example. There's a really weird, over-the-top screwball thing. And yeah, and that's a good example of a show that was controversial when it came out. Some folks loved it, some folks hated it. And it just kind of split the fandom right down the middle. And some people hailed it as genius on multiple levels. And as a result, it just kind of got that weird problem that it did not, as far as I can tell, did not get really huge sales, right? But it certainly kind of did its thing. Right. Oh, interesting. Is Space Dandy a screwball comedy? I would say yes, definitely. It's also experimental. It is a perfect example of an experimental animation series. It's as experimental as Lane is in its own way. But, yeah, I'd say it's absolutely screwball, especially because, again, bizarre stuff happens to the main character and it gets shrugged off, and there's weird things happening episode to episode that aren't referenced, and there's no real sense of continuity. Yeah, absolutely, Space Dandy is a trippy screwball comedy. Definitely there. And Space Dandy, again, a great example of a show that was really that did quite well, at least in the West. I don't have a sense of how well it did in Japan. It may have done well. I just don't know. But it was for many people the second coming of Shinichiro Watanabe. Or it was certainly sold that way. I don't think it was quite as popular as Bebop was by any stretch, but it certainly got that attention, right? So yeah, there's certainly a lot of them out there. That's a really good point. Ping Pong Club, Space Dandy, Gintama, Cromartie, Ranma 1/2, right? Inuyasha definitely has its screwball elements to it. You know, it's I would say Inuyasha kind of hovers on the edge of screwball comedy at times, where it kind of, you know, occasionally leans over the edge into screwball comedy and then pulls back. You're right. Bebop was not popular in Japan, but Space Dandy. So Space Dandy was kind of, I should say, was marketed to the West as though this was going to be another Bebop, as though Watanabe was bringing another huge successful show over to America, and it didn't quite work that way. It certainly got plenty of fans in America. It got a lot of attention, but it wasn't that enduring classic that Bebop is, for understandable reasons. I mean, if I were in charge of that, I would not have pitched Space Dandy as though it was going to be a hugely successful show, because it is this over-the-top comedy, and those don't work for everyone. It's a very specific kind of tone you're going for in a screwball comedy, and sometimes folks love it, sometimes folks hate it. You look at Airplane, the American film Airplane. It's one of the canonical screwball comedies, and it is beloved, absolutely. But then the earlier film by the same people, Kentucky Fried Movie, which has some hilarious moments, almost nobody has heard of. And why did one hit and the other not? For a lot of different reasons, but one of those things where, well, sometimes it really works, sometimes it really doesn't, right? So it's really a tough one. It can, I think you have that problem of, right? All right, on that note, I think we will finish up that little discussion on screwball comedies, why they're popular in anime. I think we've hit some really good points about why screwball does or doesn't work, and that stuff. Oh, you bring up a good point, Liquidus. Let's talk about that real quick. Ghost Stories. For those not familiar, Ghost Stories was a by-the-book anime series, a supernatural horror series aimed more at kids, sort of kids in a haunted house, kind of Scooby-Doo style show in Japan. And then when it came over to America, they made a joke dub. The actual real dub of it was a joke dub, while the sub was the original. You watch it subbed and it was the original show. The English language dub was just jokes all throughout. And that got a huge amount of attention that Ghost Stories would not have gotten otherwise. I can't imagine Ghost Stories ever being successful over in America just because of all the traditional Japanese folklore in it, and a lot of the elements of it just weren't particularly remarkable. But that remarkability made it a big thing. And actually, that's another really good point. One of the advantages of screwball comedies is you can have that one crazy scene, the one wacky thing that everyone shares online and everyone talks about. And that can drive people's attention to it, which is a little harder in a serious, rooted drama, right? Or an Idol series, where if you don't like an Idol series, if you don't like Idol series in general, you're probably not going to like this Idol series, right? So that is that. All right, so yes, so thank you all very much for that, and we'll be back next week with more to discuss. Hope to see you there. So Van Riley, there's been some interesting analysis of that. There's actually a saying in Japan, clip culture, exactly. There's a saying in Japan that, and I'm going to murder it, a person who is wholly consistent is something like is a little too boring. Basically saying that everybody should have some slight weirdness to them, some slight, at least slight inconsistency to them. Otherwise, you're just kind of a gray drone doing nothing. Right? Humans have inconsistencies in them. So there's this sense that if you are the head of Toyota, and you have this very traditional role and all these very traditional things, people expect that you probably have, you probably collect toy trains, or, you have some slightly odd hobby that lets you kind of decompress and do something else. And so it's kind of expected that there is weirdness lurking underneath the surface. And indeed, if you are a completely consistent person, apparently in Japanese society, folks will look askance at that a little bit. Like, that's a little boring. So I think there is a certain amount of escapism there, although I don't think it's quite, everyone must conform in everything. I think that's been kind of overstated or over-assumed about Japanese culture, where it's like, yeah, that is a general trend, but it's not as absolute as a lot of folks, get across. While, but I think it's more a matter of, well, I should have some strange little obsession, some little thing that I love. I buy little capsule toys, and I have a row of them, all across my my bookshelf in my house. It doesn't have to be really, really, really creepy or bizarre, but I think that's where that kind of wacky comedy aspect can come in. Where that's kind of that, you say, kind of a safety valve in a sense. All right, so I think it is time. Seems to me maybe. I don't know. I'm smelling. I'm hearing something. I'm smelling something. Do you hear that? Do you see that? I think it's time for the giveaway. It is giveaway time, everyone. Congratulations. Let us get to the giveaway, and we will give away this copy of Nadesco to somebody in the chat room. It'll be whoever's on the top of the chat room window. So it's not just whoever said the most recent thing, because that can be a little bit unfair. So I'll be giving this away here in just a few moments to the top of the chat room. And I will be looking here in about 5 seconds. Again, this is the first disc of Martian Successor Nadesco, the screwball comedy sci-fi mecha series from 1996, I do believe, dubbed and subbed. So this particular disc is going to go to Wong Lee. Congratulations, Wong Lee, for being the winner this week. I will ship this out to you tomorrow evening, or tomorrow morning, actually. If you can just get on the Discord, and let me bring up the Discord notes. So get on the Discord and instant message me. Just click on my name anywhere there on the Discord, and instant message me your mailing address, and I will send you this disc of Nadesco. Like I said, if I get that within the next 12 hours or so, maybe 12 hours, then I will be able to ship that out to you. Otherwise, if you can't get to it by then I will ship it out next week, and it will get there. So yeah, congratulations to that. So yeah, and we will have more stuff coming up. So yeah, congratulations! Yay! Good on you! Congratulations! Yay! So let's move on to something else. We actually went through a lot of material very quickly tonight. We're only an hour in, and I've gone through all 4 segments. And sort of a short anime segment tonight. So like I said, we'll probably do some mac and cheese. Is there anything you guys want to talk about? Because we're running ahead. Is there anything in the world of anime that you guys want to discuss? Yeah, Liquidus. Delaying the anime series to fix the animation quality. That's one of the reasons I brought it up. How strange that was. I'm very, very shocked that an anime series would do that, partly because that means they've got to push back whatever's going to be in that time slot for 2 weeks. Or shorten the series by 2 weeks. So that's really a big deal. Usually, like you say, they wait till the Blu-ray release. So this implies that that episode was so bad that they could not let it air. It had to be completely redone. Now, what often happens for that, or in those cases, is that some aspect of the episode was sent off to subcontractors, to some other studio to do it, and either they released something, they sent back something horrendous, or they just didn't complete it at all. It was just like, nope, sorry, didn't get done. And so they have to find somebody to get those, that bit done. That may be what happened. Okay, so focusing. I have not seen Scum's Wish. I'm not sure. I don't recognize the name either. Glad to hear Orange. You recommend Orange. I'm like, I got 2 or 3 episodes into Orange and really liked it, so I'll probably go back to there. After the Rain, liking After the Rain, cool. I have, unfortunately, and I feel bad, but I've been really busy the past month or 2 with other projects around geek archaeology, actually, and I've not been keeping up with this season. I only watched the first 1 or 2 episodes of this season. I do want to get back to probably After the Rain. That's high on my list. Place Further Than the Universe. The Trapped in an MMO, or Trapped in a Fantasy World, yeah, MMO show from this year, like that one. So that's interesting for me. Let's see here. But yeah, After the Rain certainly impressed me with its attention to character, right, and how those characters are behaving and such. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Liquidus, that it is very rare for a show to delay that. They usually just do animation fixes for Blu-ray because of those strict deadlines. Absolutely right. So yeah, and then there were 1 or 2 other shows this season, but I've got Laid Back Camp. That's another one high on my list, which is my Saturdays. So typically my Saturdays are anime watching days, and they've just been full up for the past couple weeks. And I'm going to have a pretty busy Saturday tomorrow too, but still. So I'm confused, Spin to Win. What does the audience matter to your enjoyment of a show? I mean, who cares who it's aimed for? Or who it's aimed at? And I ask because I literally, like, I hear people say that, and I just don't understand why that would be, and I'm trying to understand why people say, I don't like the show because I don't understand who it's meant for. It's like, well, what does that matter? Like, you may enjoy it or you may not enjoy it. You may be in the target audience, you may not be in the target audience. Right? Well, upskirt shots of a 17-year-old girl who is legal in parts of Japan. Right? So she is an adult, depending on your prefecture. How much anime is outsourced? Good question, Derp. So, like you say, pretty much all in-between animation is outsourced. And other than that, there's a significant percentage of the shots themselves that are animated overseas. You know, they'll hand off a shot or 2 to overseas episodes or overseas studios. So I think that's one of those things where honestly, I think it varies a lot from show to show, and nobody really keeps track in the sense that, you know, that is certainly buried in a spreadsheet somewhere. But I don't think anyone, when the show is done, comes back and says, well, you know, we went back and totaled, and 8% of our shots went here, right? It doesn't really go. That's interesting, Spin to Win. Because to me, she does come across as mature. I mean, mature by high school girl standards. I've known plenty of mature 17-year-olds. I've known mature 13-year-olds. Right? Not all of them. Not the majority of them, but they're out there. So I'll put it this way. What about her behavior made it seem like she wasn't mature? I think that's an interesting question. And I've only seen, like, again, the first episode, so I don't... You know, I'm wondering, you know, what those... You know, what you saw, and which I may have not seen those things. So I may not understand that. How is she more mature relative to her classmates? I'm not saying she's more mature relative to her classmates. I'm saying she is a relatively mature high school girl, and that there are mature high school girls. Maybe, and again, I've only seen a little bit of scenes with her classmates, but her classmates seem pretty mature as well. You know, they make reasonable choices to go out and do things, and she makes reasonable choices too. Do you recommend some good romance anime? I have no idea what good means, Van Riley. What kind of romance series do you like? Do you like funny romance series or dramatic romance series? So, because for example, His and Her Circumstances, Karekeshi no Konojo, Karekeshi no Konojo, or Karekano, is a great example of a screwball comedy romance series that I love. Whereas Say I Love You, that is the title, Say I Love You, is a good example of a much more dramatic, much more serious, modern romance series that I think does a good job of portraying a relationship well. But you also have, sort of stuff in the middle. I really enjoyed the romance in Bigara HK, or Yamada's First Time, which is kind of an oddball series. It's not really a screwball comedy, it's just a romance series. Right? I enjoyed how that relationship built over time. So Yamada's First Time is a good example of a show about people who aren't in love, essentially finding that they care for each other over the course of a show, which I find kind of interesting. See, I don't believe that love needs to have a rational explanation. I don't think I don't think people go out and fall in love rationally. I think people just, sometimes it makes sense, but a lot of times you fall in love and there's no logical reason why you're in love with that person. You just are. That person clicks for you. Right? Okay, yes, I have not witnessed that lazing around with no responsibility in any significant way, so you may be absolutely right about that. I can't argue that one way or the other. But I saw that show as being a good example of, you come across somebody and your paths cross in the rain, and just for whatever reason that's a trigger, and that's one of the things that makes us human, is that love is not rational. She just fell for this guy. So it's a good question, Derp. I have no idea of numbers about South Korea versus other countries. I do know it's one of those things where the vast majority was outsourced to South Korea a while back, back in the 80s and 90s. And now a lot of that gets outsourced to other countries because they're now cheaper than South Korea. But it's even harder to find numbers for exactly that. So I would say there's probably a lot more in those other countries than we would expect. But I certainly could not put an over under 50% number on it. There's just no way of knowing, right? Yes, I don't think a show needs to have and this would be a good example. Like, I love Lane because there is no apparent main theme to that show. It is not until the end of the next to last episode when they begin to reveal the theme of that show. They hint at it in episode or layer 11. But the end of episode 12 was like, okay, here's what we're trying to say. This is finally our thesis. So I have no problem with shows that have little or no clear main theme. To me, that makes a show interesting. It can make a show interesting, obviously. You could have just random stuff happening. Like we were talking about with comedies. You can just have a screwball comedy and just random things happening. Chocolate Panda Picture Show is a great example of that, where it is just random stuff for 25 minutes. And some folks like that, some folks don't. Ah, yes, Romeo x Juliet, or Romeo cross Juliet, the anime versions of stuff. It certainly has a cohesive tone and direction. But you're talking about main theme. Those are different things. Let's see here. So yeah, so Van Riley, what kind of, what are some romance series that you've seen that you really like, that we can kind of triangulate based on that? I had a real problem with Toradora. I watched the first episode of that and just could not stand Taiga as a character. But a lot of folks love that character, so it's one of those things I can absolutely recommend if you're into that kind of a show. Same thing with Oremo, for example. Romance shows which would also be seinen. Ah, okay. That's interesting. Let me pull up my list of anime seen so I can try to answer that. So a seinen series with a strong romance plotline. Not a lot. There's not much seinen, period. So you're not going to get a lot of strong seinen romances. But let me look through the list. Actually, I'm going to go to the bottom and go up, because I always start at the top alphabetically, and then, let's see here. So, no. Can't really go there. So I haven't watched enough to see where this goes, but I've heard people recommend the romance in Welcome to the NHK. That the relationship between those two characters, which is not completely functional and strong and happy and so forth, but just seeing where that relationship goes for them in Welcome to the NHK has been interesting. But again, I don't know. I can't say one way or the other. Let's see here. Seinen. So here's a good example, one that is kind of seinen in approach, would be Saikano. Saikano. It is about high schoolers, but it is a much more dark, I keep using this word, grounded, but this series, it is much more about real emotions, real difficult things characters are dealing with, and not in a totally weird angsty way, but it is a much more dramatic, much more serious take on the typical romance story. I will say it has a weird fantastical science fiction concept woven into it, but I would certainly say if you're looking for something a little more seinen than your typical romance series, Saikano is one of the ways to go. Let's see here. The romance in Zeta Gundam. Good question, Spin. I will get back to that in a minute. Let me scroll up. Ooh, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna recommend this. It's a tough recommendation. Now and then, here and there. It is a straight drama about a boy transported to a fantasy world that is basically a fantasy version of like all the horrible child soldier stuff done in Africa. And it's very clear, like that is the inspiration, and they're making a show about that, but it's not there, so folks aren't gonna get really angry and send letters. But like there's no comedy. There's a little bit of comedic stuff in episode 1, but then he gets transported to the fantasy world, and it is a drama. It is a drama. It is very sad. But the character is very interested in this girl, and that's actually who kind of brings him to this other world. And so seeing their relationship, I think, is very interesting, and kind of where that story goes. But again, that is a Grave of the Fireflies scale sad show. Here. And again, not really a romance, but there is a strong romance story in it. That show that we watched that we ended up stopped watching after like 8 episodes because it wasn't going anywhere. The one with the psychic boy, and the girl that he was interacting with, gosh, someone in chat will remember me, or remember it for me. See here. Yeah, Spice and Wolf, great example of a mature romantic storyline in a series like that. Thank you, Kimaguri Orange Road. That's the one. Good memory there, Spinduin. Let's see here. And that is one that just doesn't work for me, but I think is a strong romantic storyline told throughout there. And just the main character is kind of an immature. It's a very immature teenage boy, and so you got to be willing to live with that. See here. Some more mature romance stories. Interesting. I mean, I could recommend. No. Okay, one second. Oh yeah, Koikaze, which is about an adult man falling in love with his junior high school sister. Treated seriously, like it's not a comedy. It is a romance series, and he feels extremely guilty about this. So it's it's not fan servicey at all. So that is an interesting one. I've not gotten to the end, so I don't know where it goes with the storyline, but that's interesting. Again, I have not forgotten your Zeta Gundam question. Let's see here. Serious relationship. Serious. Yeah, I think those are the ones that really come to mind. Let's see here. Eureka 7, yeah, good example. Strong romance storyline through there. Cool, glad to be of service. So, the romance in Zeta Gundam, I think, is one of the more interesting elements of the series, because Zeta Gundam is arguably a series about tragedy. That is its theme. In Zeta Gundam, nobody is happy. Nobody ends up happy in that show. That's not a spoiler. It's not to say that it's everyone dies at the end. It's not to say that everyone is miserable all the time. But there's no real big ending. Oh, good point, Spinduin. Maison Ikoku. Great recommendation. So to an extent, Zeta Gundam's relationships are about frustration, are about characters who are interested in each other for either unhealthy ways, or they're interested in people who just don't care about them, right? Where it's not necessarily an abusive relationship, not necessarily a bad relationship, but they're just not connecting, right? And I think that is one of the interesting things about Zeta Gundam, is that in original Gundam, for example, you didn't have much romance at all. Where there was romance, it was very much subsumed by the war that was going on. And pretty much everyone involved recognized that they weren't going to be all lovey-dovey, during this conflict. So that takes very much a back burner to what's going on. Whereas in Zeta Gundam, you have characters with stronger feelings for each other, and they're kind of forced through circumstances to avoid those things. The stuff with, oh gosh, I'm forgetting her name. The red-haired girl and Patsumis Sirocco. She clearly has this very strong obsession with him, and he's just playing her like a fiddle. He's totally manipulating her to his own ends, and it's very unhealthy, but it's very clear. And it's one of those things where, in a sense, she can't help it. Like, she is just infatuated with this guy, and that's just how it's going to be. And then you have characters like Ensign Rakoa, who is a very strong female character, if I'm remembering the name right. And she is just this female character who is doing her own thing in her own way, and that is just there. And she has interest in other characters, but it does not, it doesn't go anywhere, because she just kind of doesn't need it in that sense. And you have the weird thing about Patsumis Sirocco's obsession with the teenage girl in there. No, not Sirocco, the Char clone his obsession. By the way, that's not a spoiler either. He is very much a version of Char in this show. He is not Char, so it's, you know. But yeah, he's just obsessed with his girl, and he can't help it, right? Just that's his thing, and she hates him. She actively hates him. So it's one of the tough things about Zeta Gundam is it is not a satisfying show in that way. It is all of these characters are struggling with these things that they can't win against. And again, that's another big theme of Zeta Gundam, is about that exactly. And it makes the show kind of hard to watch in its own way. But it's one of the fascinating things about it. Yeah, Jared's a great example. Every time Jared finds somebody he cares about or a strong mentor figure, Camille kills him or her in the next battle, right? They end up going up against Camille and getting killed. And it just drives Jared, and again, this is like episode 5 stuff. But it's just so tough on Jared. And that is kind of what drives him to becoming this obsessed antagonist. They don't all die, right? But that is kind of where that goes. I'm being a little hyperbolic there. Yeah, exactly. You know, there are, you know, and sometimes you care about multiple people, and you kind of have to choose. You can't just sit there and pretend that this is going to last forever. And again, this is 1985. This is pretty early on for something that mature and complex. Yeah, and Fa. I mean, poor Fa. Fa is there by Camille's side the entire show, and he barely pays any attention to her. It's one of the reasons why I argue Camille is autistic. He's definitely on the autism spectrum somewhere. Whether they were aware of the term or they were intentionally modeling that kind of behavior or not, boy, there's that, and it's exactly how he takes her for granted for the entire series, and in a sense, she kind of has to live with that. She has to recognize the fact that Camille is never going to be, you know, strongly lovey-dovey with her, right? Yeah, and you'd already had that in Macross, right? Although Macross was very loosey-goosey with the whole relationship, you know. Oh, I fell in love with an alien, and then we're married. Like, literally, later that episode, like an alien tries to kill one of the pilots. During the assassination attempt, they fall in love, and later that episode, they get married. In Macross. So, they were not trying to carefully model those sorts of things, right? Like, literally, she has a knife, and he grabs her wrist, and they're struggling, and then he leans in and kisses her, and then suddenly they fall all over each other. It's like, yeah, as my mom used to say about that. Yeah, that's the first thing on my mind, right? Oh boy, do I get all interested in somebody and all excited about somebody, right? Dragon Ball is actually an interesting aspect of this, because I would say early in Dragon Ball's life, there was this sense that the story was about sacrifice, about how you have to give up things to do the right thing, where, you know, these heroes could never be normal people. They could never have normal lives because they were all out saving the world. And then they all got normal lives. And they all got families and kids and domestic responsibilities and all those sorts of things. And I think Android 18 and Krillin is kind of where that very much took that turn. Where suddenly, okay, we're going to have these two characters suddenly fall in love and get married and have kids. Okay. Oh, she's a cyborg. See, I didn't know that about Android 18, about the androids and how all they worked. I was not paying that close attention when I was watching the various clips of Dragon Ball Z back in the day. I will admit. It did not seem that deep when I was watching it, at least those moments, right? But yeah, that was really weird. And again, that I think a lot of that comes out of the old Dr. Slump stuff, where it's just very oddball. Hate it when shonen goes so long as them losing their identity. Do you mean like the show goes on so long that the characters' identities change so much that they're or shift so much, not necessarily intentionally change, but kind of drift? Is that what you're talking about? Or that kind of the themes of the show change over time? Oh yeah, I heard something about how like the term wasn't android in the original. It was like cyber, but it was. I think it's one of those things where the Japanese term is used for both androids and cyborgs, and it being, you know, anime, and because of how they drew them and how loosey goosey Toriyama is with his character designs and how realistic they are. They're like, I don't know if it's a cyborg or not. There's nothing clear about there, so they just went with the android. That's what I heard. I don't know. Both of those, okay, yeah. And it's one of the things I love about Kenshin, by the way, is that it never went there. You know, Kenshin's characters remain consistent all the way through that show, very deliberately. And by season 3, it goes off the rails, but that's because there was no more manga, and they were just doing constant, you know, a filler. It was a filler season, but that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Naruto is a victim of its own success, where it's quite clear to me that Kishimoto never had a really strong overall story with Naruto. Like, he had a concept going forward, but it wasn't like, I'm going to do, you know, 10 volumes, and volume 1 will be this, volume 2 will be this, and that's why the plot shifts around a lot. And to his credit, he figured out the points at which the story was becoming less interesting, and he pivoted. So, you know, as soon as something got boring, he figured out another way to go. And so, full props to him for doing that and not just driving it into the ground. But if a show has to last for 10 years, the plot's going to get muddled. It's going to get drawn out, and it's just going to kind of go everywhere as opposed to being tight and focused. So that is a drawback to doing a big shonen series like that. All right, so I'm going to start doing some cooking, some mac and cheese. We can continue this discussion over in the kitchen, but I just want to start moving everything over there. So let me start a cartoon here. Again, I think I'll do a Superman, and then we will come back from that. Do I have a shorter one? Let me see what that is. Oh yeah, that was, 1 second. Let me find something a little less weird, and a little shorter. That's long. We'll do that one. Here's a weird one. Yeah, okay. So we'll come back in a few minutes after this cartoon break.
Ramjet, internationally famous good guy, devil-may-care flying fool, and inventor of Ramjet proton pill, which when taken as directed by a physician gives me the strength of 20 atom bombs for 20 seconds. Reporting, sir.
Ramjet, take a look at the map.
You mean this one?
Yes, Roger. May I call you Roger?
Roger.
Splendid, Ramjet. Now, take a close look at the map.
Thumping Thunderbird, sir. Does this mean that those arch fiends, no goods, have a machine that's destroying our cities?
No, it means those arch fiends, the no-goods, have a machine that's destroying our tiny little light bulbs.
Malfunctioning missiles, sir. That means every refrigerator in the country will be dark. No one will know what to eat.
Exactly. And when the entire nation becomes weak from hunger, no-goods will take over. Now, what's your plan?
I plan to find that diabolical machine before it's too late.
Then hurry. They just got Chillicothe, Ohio. Good luck, Rock.
You rotten kind of sandal kind of...
Little does Roger Ramjet know that the man behind this devilish plot is none other than the notorious mad scientist, Dr. Ivan Evil Kisser.
In a few hours, my super electrostatic filament fragmentizer will have extinguished every tiny little light bulb in America.
What about Roger Ramjet and the American Eagles and the people that fly?
Who's afraid of Ramjet and those rotten kids?
We are. Me and my both of us together.
In order for Ramjet to reach us, you'll have to fly straight through that innocent-looking cloud, which is in reality a cloud of sleep inducer. By the time he wakes up, it will be too late to stop us.
Dr. Evil Kisser, you're the greatest and nicest. Swell. Not so weird. And while Roger Ramjet sleeps, his plane is headed straight for a huge mountain known as Butternut Peak. Meanwhile, in the ready room of the American Eagle Squadron, Yank, Doodle, and Dee watch while Dan tries to contact Roger Ramjet.
Roger should have located the no-goods hideout by now. Then why can't we reach him on the incredibly high-frequency telecommunicator? Yeah, how come? What if you turn on this switch, Mark? Turn on this switch. Good thinking, Dee. Fizzling fallout, Roger's sound asleep. He's headed straight for Butternut Peak. Come on, gang, we've got to save him. One for all and all for one. The Eagle fly till the job is done. Hey, boys, you forgot to brush your teeth. There's Roger's ship, fellas. But how do we wake him up? Say, Hank, did you bring your bugle? Sure, that's it. I'll play reveille to the intercom.
Who? What? Where? When? Why?
Wake up, Roger. You're about to crash into a mountain.
Oh, I thought I'd been drafted again. Out now to destroy that machine.
Who's there?
Ramjet calling.
Who?
It's me.
You mean it's I?
No, it's not. It's me, Roger Ramjet. The game is up, evil kisser.
Gang, it takes 5 seconds for that pill to work.
Just 2 more seconds until the pill goes into effect.
18, 19, 20.
Well, that'll hold them, eh, boys?
Rats,
No, you make
curses,
sense.
things of that nature.
Ramjet's proton energy pills have done the job again.
Roger Ramjet, I salute you. Once more, you saved your country. Goodbye and good... Roger, you're a scoundrel.
And so, once again, the good guys triumph over the bad guys, thanks to Roger Ramjet and the American Eagles.
When Ramjet takes a proton pill, the crooks begin to worry. They can't escape their awful fate from protons' mighty fury. Roger Ramjet, he's our man, hero of our nation. For his adventures, just be sure and stay tuned to this station. So come and join us, all you kids, for lots of fun and laughter, as Roger Ramjet and his men get all the crooks they're after. Roger Ramjet, he's our man, hero of our nation. For his adventures, just be sure and stay tuned to this station.
Okay, we should be good to go over here. Video quality might be a little weirder, but I need to go over to... Okay, good. That's all good to go. So the chat's happy. We're reconnected. Everything's good. Good. All right. I should point out I've been having some weird problems with my oven lately. It's been... My closet is showing. But it's been taking a very long time to heat up. So we'll see what that does and what effect that has. So as usual, I have no idea what I'm doing. Not quite true, but I'm going to make mac and cheese just by ratio, and we'll see how that goes. Basically, I'm going to do equal parts milk, pasta, and cheese, and throw that all into one plate. So I'm going to go with 2 cups of each, and we'll see what happens. Now, we do know, though, that pasta expands as it cooks. So I'm going to actually go with like a cup and a half of pasta uncooked, so it'll become 2 cups cooked, roughly. Whoa! That's like a cup of, 2 cups of pasta. Yep. So, that's about 1.5 cups. Oh, low, actually. A few more in there. Yeah, it's a cup and a half. Yeah, cup and a half. All right. But before we put that in there, I'm going to put some water in a pan. And get it to a boil. You actually want a fair amount of water in your pan. Maybe a rather small pan for that, but we'll see what happens. We'll put some salt in there as well. Salt does have an effect, I'm not sure what. And a little oil. Now, oil, let's see, veg oil. Oil has been somewhat controversial when it comes to pasta, in the sense that why would you, oil separates from water, right? It always rises to the top. So why would you put that in here when it's never going to mix with the pasta? You just have pasta in the bottom and oil on the top. Kind of weird. But what does seem to happen is that as you're pouring or getting the pasta out, it goes through that layer of oil and oils it up a little bit, lubes it, and just makes it less sticky. So, you don't have to put oil in, but it does seem to help a little bit when folks have tried it. So, I'm going to add a little bit of oil. But again, totally up to you, one way or the other. I eat boxed mac and cheese as well. There's no shame in that. But I also like making my own. It's really tough when you get sick and you want mac and cheese to sit down and, boil pasta and shred cheese and all that stuff. I totally understand that. I am absolutely appreciative of that. That's why I have some boxed mac and cheese around. So I've got some cheese, I've got some cheddar and some Gouda. And I'm going to do roughly half and half of those and see what we get. So I will start actually shredding some of this stuff right now. You could use pre-shredded cheese, but that pre-shredded cheese tends to be pretty low quality. So it's one of those things where if you have the cheese and you can shred it, it will taste better. The quality of that cheese is such that you will have a stronger flavor and a more nuanced flavor with real cheese and with well-made cheese compared to other things. Just get this label off. So there's that Gouda. That nice wine on there. All right, so I know I will need. Well, actually, I do have a little mixing thing. So while we're waiting for that to boil, we can go ahead and shred some of the cheese. Nothing too complex here. Now, if you go with a really large hole on your shredder, things will not melt as quickly as they will if you go with a smaller thing. And of course, with shredder, you always have the chance of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So you got to be careful there. But with something like mac and cheese, because it's all going to be baked together in the oven for a little bit to kind of meld everything together, that cheese is going to melt anyway. So I usually go with a larger grind, if you will, on this than a lot of people do. But I think for now, just kind of for practice's sake, I'm going to show you what's going on. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go with the smaller one so you can see what that does. So we'll have a couple of different variations. So there's the regular sort of shredded cheese size. So like I said, I want roughly equal parts of both of these, so I'll probably end up using almost all of this block of cheddar, and then maybe half or a third of that block of Gouda. Actually, that's a good amount of cheese. Okay, good. So there's about half a cup of that, and I'm going to cut away the rind. You can totally eat the rind, nothing wrong with that, but I think for mac and cheese, I don't want a lot of rind in there. And by the way, make sure when you're doing this that you pull the plastic back sufficiently that you're not accidentally grating plastic into your cheese. That would be a bad thing. Now, I do not know if equal volumes of all of these things will make a good macaroni and cheese. I'm going to try it. Last time I tried equal volumes, there were basically a cup of each, and that seemed to work. So we're going to double it and see what happens. I think that's what I did before. I should have documented. I should have written it down, but I didn't. My mistake, or my not thinking it through. Okay, there's 2 cups of cheese shredded. I'm going to add a little bit more because the gaps between all of those makes that not quite 2 cups. There's a lot of air in there, so we want to make this fair. Compared to that, the milk, for example, which will completely fill its volume. So there we go. There's a solid 2 cups of cheese. Didn't take too long. I added tuna to mac and cheese before. I have not, but I seem to think I have eaten that before. Like, that does not seem completely foreign to me. You talk about how anime fandom has changed over the years. Oh, yes, I can do that. It's changed a lot. Because back in the day, anime was a tiny, tiny fandom. And not just tiny. So I got in the mid-90s, and the average person in America literally did not know what anime was. Like, the term anime had no meaning in America. Right? So that was how obscure this fandom was. And that was kind of a problem for a lot of things. All right, we are almost at a boil. A few more moments here. A lot of small bubbles, big bubbles. Almost. And so when you tried to find anime, you had to really dig. You had to look. It was not in stores, your average store. Maybe if you went to like a record store, back when those existed, they would have a few DVD, I'm sorry, not DVDs, a few VHS tapes. There were no DVDs yet, really. Or they were just coming out. But the vast majority of stuff was still VHS. And so you just had to deal with that. gonna put the pasta in. I'll grab a spoon here. Wooden spoons don't conduct heat very much, so they're good for this sort of thing. Stir that occasionally. And actually go ahead and put that in there for now. And so you had this issue that maybe a record store would have some tapes of various stuff, and they would have, so my local record store, for example, had like 3 Ranma tapes, maybe 3 Dragon Ball Z tapes, 1 copy of Akira, 1 copy of Ghost in the Shell, original movie, and that was about it. Like that was all the anime you could buy. And so you just had to buy that and live with it. Like, there were only a few anime available in English. Now, if you knew people, you could get anime tapes that had been taped off of Japanese television. They were untranslated, it was raw. Maybe if you were lucky, your Japanese friend who taped it for you could provide you with a summary of what happens in each episode or each movie. Oh, good. It's preheated. So, and good luck with that translation. So that became a thing. It's like, okay, you were really limited in terms of what anime you could buy. So the thing is, what happened was people would just watch all the anime. Right? They just go through and just start watching, okay, I'm going to buy everything that's available and just try it all out because there are only 6 anime for sale in my town. Right? Now, there were mail order places, but still, very little had been translated. So that gave you a slightly larger selection. But we're still talking maybe 24 things. It was getting better and better slowly, but it was kind of crazy. You could absolutely and quite easily keep up with all the anime being released. You could watch all the anime being released and available and existed in for fans. A few things had been fan translated, but fan translation at the time required like a video editing suite the size of this room, right? There were no personal computers with video editing software on it. A personal computer did not have the processing power to edit video or to add subtitles onto a video. That was just inconceivable. So there were a few fan subs, again, sort of scattered around. Generally, folks were, and often back then, a fan sub was simply a script. It was a document that told you what they were saying. It was not actually subtitled. But a lot of them were actually subtitled. So that was one of the other things. You just kind of had to live with that. Let me measure out my milk. Ready for this? So you were, very limited. The other problem was getting together with other anime fans. Now, there were a few anime conventions by that point. But there were maybe one in the nearest city. There were probably a dozen anime conventions total at that point in America. Maybe. So, which meant it was very hard to find out what was going on, what people were watching, things like that. In fact, back then, conventions were one of the main ways in which you got a chance to watch anime that wasn't available to you. Because something may have been released, in California or New York City, and there was a lot more tapes available of it over in there. It would be a technically national release, but only so many tapes would make it any given distributor or any given store. So if you went to an anime convention, they might have a video room, and you could watch anime. There was very little anime airing on television, practically none. This was well before Toonami. It was before Cartoon Network, indeed. Cartoon Network did not exist yet. So you just kind of had to buy tapes. And those tapes were typically about $35. Well, $30, 25 to $30. I should say that. And you had to live with that. You had to buy those. And of course, that tape would be either subbed or dubbed. This is the origin of the sub versus dub debate. Is that you had to choose whether you were spending $25 for the dub or $25 for the sub. And that created this split. Right? So yeah, that's an issue. So I'm just mixing this, stirring this, and occasionally checking the pasta by just seeing how soft it is. It's still pretty firm, waiting for that al dente, that softness. So yeah, you just kind of had to live with what anime was available and just watch what you could, what you could find and afford. And then you started getting things like Sci-Fi Channel's festivals of anime and little bits of anime on television here and there. But there was nothing consistent until Toonami and Cartoon Network and the whole Toonami thing. So back then it was pretty much all tapes. It was all your collection, with a few things on television, like Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon. But even those, understand, it would take a year or two for an anime series to come out in America. So it would come out in 1995, and we get it in 1997 over here on tape. And then that was also true of the TV shows. Excuse me, the TV shows. You were not getting first-run TV shows over here. It would take a year, usually. A year was about the average to get an anime series over here. And so you were watching Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z, but these are episodes that are years and years old. And then Pokemon happened. And Pokemon changed everything. Pokemon suddenly brought anime to the mainstream. People knew what anime was as a result of Pokemon. Because here was a show that it was fairly recent in Japan and was a global phenomenon. Okay, we're getting al dente here. Let me just pull out a noodle. I'm just pulling out a noodle here. Whole wooden spoon and everything. Okay, so a little firm. I'm gonna give it another minute or two. That should be it. Okay. Cheese over here. And this was pre-Pokemon, pre-Digimon. Until Pokemon came out, and then boom. That was around 2000, year 2000. But yeah, maybe you can get imports. But yeah, there were mail order places, so literally you have to send away for catalog. You have to send a letter with like money in it to an address, and they would send you a catalog. That's how Right Stuff got started, by the way. They were a mail order catalog of anime, run by fans. Perfect. All right. Go. I'm just going to drain that. Okay. Now putting this back. Actually, give that a moment. Now, I'm not trying to really, let this dry out or anything. This doesn't need to drain for minutes and minutes and minutes. Now I'm going to go ahead and put some milk in here. Again, 2 cups of milk, just like 2 cups of pasta. Actually, what I'm going to do is try to fill this back up with pasta, just to get a sense of how close I am to 2 cups. Cool, look at that. Almost perfect. Good. So that tells us about 75% of your, fill volume will give you your thing. Okay. So I'm actually going to turn this back on. And add in the cheese. I'm just putting this on, actually I'm going to put it on sort of a medium-low heat, so about 1/3 of the full intensity here. And I definitely don't want to scald this milk, I don't want to burn the milk, but I just want to heat this up enough to melt everything together. Now, a lot of recipes will have you leave out some of the milk, leave out some of the cheese and sprinkle it on top. That is not a bad idea. And I might actually shred up some more cheese and put it on top of this. But we're just going to see what this is. It's turning out to be pretty darn milky. The cheese is really melted in. We'll see what happens. I'm going to add a little more salt. Because all that salt came out in the water. And we'll add some pepper. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the hot mac and cheese. I've had it, and it's been, I've had good versions of it, but it's just not my thing. Maybe this is too much milk. We'll find out. And then, I have this guy here. I'm going to spray it down with some just like vegetable spray. Oh, actually, there's some cheese in the bottom of that. I didn't get out. There we go. Let's stir that in. Okay. Yeah, this feels like a lot of milk. This might be a fail. Definitely feels like a fail. But we'll find out. That does not look like mac and cheese to me. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and bake it. Like I said, I will add some more cheese to the top. Though I will not, actually. Yeah, because it's just going to, melt there into the, you know what, I'm sufficiently suspicious. I'm going to pour out a little bit of that milk. Okay. That feels more reasonable to me. We'll go in here. And we're going to let that bake for a while and just see what happens. Yeah, exactly. Conventions were like 80 people. So you kind of had to live with what you got. That's a little better. Yeah, and anime was just what you could find. So it was a solitary fandom. You were pretty much on your own. Maybe you could find a convention, but generally you had to do it. And hopefully you had a friend who knew what anime was, but it was extremely rare. Until Pokemon. And then, Pokemon complicated things too, because it was controversial. People thought it was, teaching kids to gamble. And it probably had occult symbolism in there somewhere. But it definitely, saying, oh, I'm a big fan of Pokemon was not necessarily something you said in public, because people would often get the wrong impression from that. And similarly, if you said, oh, I like anime, they said, what is that? And you say, like Pokemon, that was their only frame of reference, generally speaking. Now, some folks were more aware of anime through, violent tentacle hentai. That was a bit of a meme before Pokemon came out. So that's another reason why you really didn't talk about anime much. People assumed it was all that, pretty much. Wasn't helped by the fact that when Sci-Fi Channel did its shows, they would show things like Demon City Shinjuku, which had tentacle monsters in it. They weren't tentacle rape monsters, but they were tentacle monsters. And Ninja Scroll and other things like that, they kind of had that feel to them. So, Yeah. I think Anime Expo is now up to several 100,000, aren't they? Aren't they well over 100,000? But yeah, you were. So that's the other weird thing, is that back in the day, you were a fan of anime. Not harems, not mecha, not anything, because you watched it all. Now, you didn't necessarily like all of it, but you were kind of forced to watch a wide variety of anime. Otherwise, there was nothing to watch. And that was actually kind of a healthy thing for fandom, because folks could actually talk about things, and they could discuss what they liked or didn't like. They could talk about characters they liked and didn't like. It was more homogeneous in that sense, where everybody watched Ranma. Not everybody, but pretty much everybody could talk to Ranma. Pretty much everybody could talk to Dragon Ball Z or the other shows. And it was a frame of reference, which we've lost. But yeah, very, very different. It's one of the reasons why I collect anime. To me, that is a fundamental part of the experience. You have to have it. You need the anime. You need to have a copy of it, because you may not find it in a year. You may have found this in a store somewhere, and this is their only copy. So you have to snag it now, because you will never see it again. And it's not true anymore, but that is what I grew up with as an anime fan in that sense. I was an adult when I got into anime. Well, late teenager. About 20. Very late teenager. So yeah, it's a weird thing. Actually, no, late teenager. It was 95. So. Yeah, well, and so what happened there with Funimation is Funimation was aware of the fan sub names, and so they were sufficiently savvy to realize, why come up with different names of things than the names that people know from the fan subs? Like, if the Japanese staff, don't give us strong direction one way or the other, why not choose what's popular, what folks know about? So that was smart on them to go with the fan subtitle and be aware. And the other thing is, and again, this is the thing that is true, has been true all since the beginning. Anime companies in America are staffed by anime fans. You do not go to work at an anime company in America unless you either are a fan of anime or you become a fan of anime very quickly. Every time I've talked to or seen any of the folks at any of those companies, like, they can talk to anime. They know this stuff. So they were aware of the fan subs. They knew those things existed. They weren't heads in the sand. But yes, they're definitely different. Wanted to get into more cooking. Van Riley said, are there many animes that teach cooking? Not many, but there are some. The thing is, they teach Japanese cooking, right? So there's not going to be a lot of things that teach you how to make macaroni and cheese. Right? But some of the ones that come to mind include Sweetness and Lightning. What else? I know there are some. Food Wars, apparently. I haven't seen any of it. Although it's over the top, but Food Wars has it, apparently. What other shows actually feature cooking, as in you actually get a recipe? I'm trying to think. I know there are some out there. I can't think of anything else. What about Yakitate Japan? The one about there's a guy who wants to become a baker. Yakitate Japan. And then Yumero Patisserie was a show from a couple of years ago, but I don't know. And she's trying to become a pastry chef, but I don't know how much actual cooking is in that. How many recipes there are in that, so to speak. Yeah, there's not a lot. The Bartender, anime series from, 15 years ago now, but that's about mixed drinks. It's not cooking per se, but it is recipes. Yeah, there's got to be others. thinking back to where I've seen characters in a kitchen cooking, making something. Nothing comes to mind. I have been getting into sushi, by the way. I have sushi stuff in here, and I've tried making sushi once. Did not turn out very well, but that's completely expected. I did not expect to get sushi right my first time. So once I've tried a few times, and I've gotten to where I'm making something that doesn't fall apart immediately, it doesn't have to be perfect, but once I've got kind of the basic ideas down, then we'll do a sushi episode, and we'll make some sushi. One of the problems with making sushi is ingredients, in the sense that, yeah, you have the rice and the nori, but where are you going to find sushi quality fish in sufficient quantities that you don't have to make 50 rolls with one serving, right? Like, very small amounts of fish go into each of these, each sushi roll. So it's like you would have to make dozens and dozens of sushi rolls with just one little thing of fish, one little package of fish. So, yeah, that's one of the big problems I have. So I've been doing, for example, I got some shredded carrots, and I'm just using that as my my filling. It's not a traditional thing, but at least that is a filling, right? And you get, obviously the other stuff like avocado and such, but that is an issue. You have to use these fresh ingredients, and unless you're making massive amounts, it's hard to get that in good quantities, unless you just use, 10% of it, and then throw the rest away, or use it in something else. So I will probably end up having to, I'll get sushi quality fish, make sushi, and then, grill the rest of it, because otherwise it will all go to waste. Let's see here. How experimental would you say you are with your cooking? Do you try a lot of foreign cuisine? I would say moderately experimental in the sense that I try different things. I want to get into Chinese and Japanese dishes fairly soon. I'm more about about understanding different food concepts. So I can make casserole, not just tuna noodle casserole, not just, different kinds, but I can combine any number of ingredients, essentially, into an effective casserole because I know how that works. And that's kind of how I approach things, is I will try a bunch of different kinds of casserole until I understand the mechanics behind it. And then you can do a lot of different things that way. Same thing with stews, where, I don't really make American stews or Chinese stews or anything like that. I make stew with the ingredients that are appropriate to what I want to make. So that's kind of its own thing. And obviously, cuisines don't work that way. Chinese cuisine requires making things in a very particular way. Same thing with American cuisine, actually, in its own way. So, I don't really do cuisines that way, but I'm very interested in figuring out that stuff. So stir fry is a good example, where I can make a standard sort of fried rice, and then I can throw things into that fried rice. But I'm not good at taking small pieces of meat and breading them and frying them, and all the various things you go into either American Chinese stuff, cooking, the kind of stuff you get in a Chinese restaurant over here, or traditional Chinese cooking. Which traditional Chinese cooking is really hard because the ingredients are completely different than what we have here. Literally half of your ingredients list is going to have to come from a specialty Chinese market because we do not have those things here. So that's hard. So yeah, I'm kind of trying to deconstruct cooking in that way. All right, let's check on our thing. See where we are. So I suspect the actual recipe is going to be maybe half as much milk for the rest of your things. Your ingredients. Yep, that's kind of coming together. I can show you. And by the way, the oven is on 350 degrees, which is a good, medium temperature. I'm going to stir this a bit. The milk is starting to come to kind of cook out, which is interesting. There's some of that cheese. So I'm actually going to add more cheese because I may have removed some cheese during that process. So I'm just going to grate up a little bit more of the cheddar, I think. And this will be kind of like putting that cheese on the top. They often recommend. This is the problem. We get down to this bit, and it's like, ah. Okay, so all I've done here is sprinkle a bit more cheese over the top of that, and now we will put that back in the oven. You could also put like breadcrumbs over the top. Good stuff. And we'll let that cook for a little while longer. Again, see what happens. I expect some of that milk will boil off, essentially, in the oven. Not actually boiling, but you get the idea. Where stuff does reduce as it's hot. Yeah, I don't know how much Ristorante Paradiso goes into the actual food. Oh yeah, bento. I've heard about that. Haven't seen it, but it sounds fun. I think I saw episode 1, and it was fun. But it's kind of weird, like, you know, Italian food is a good example of my approach to cooking, where I can cook pasta. And I have a sense of sauces, of cream sauces and tomato sauces. I don't feel a need to learn how exactly to make the perfect chicken carbonara. Because I can combine, you know, I can cook chicken and all those things and make something. And I would rather kind of come up with my own exact spices in the moment, like, you know, figure out the herbs I want and so forth, rather than making this one chicken carbonara every single time. Now, that latter approach is not a wrong way to do it. And you can derive a lot of joy from coming up with a stable of like 20 recipes that you can do really well that you love. But it's just not my approach. I like to deconstruct things a bit more. Archaeologist. Right. Someday I would love to do a series of videos that are a condensed, you know, here's a 10-minute video on how to cook pasta. Here's a 10-minute video on how to construct a casserole, so that folks just know how to make those things, you know, and it's not follow this recipe, it is here are the different pieces of it, but that takes a lot of time to build. So it's tough. But, you know, maybe someday. But I got a lot of stuff going. I've got the role-playing stuff. I'm doing 8 conventions this year. And like I'm submitting multiple panels to each one. By multiple, I mean like 8 or more. Got this Friday stream. I've got Kit Bash. I've got video gaming. You know, drawing. Workshop Wednesday. Full-time job. I'm not complaining. It's just, you know, that kind of fills up the schedule. Makes it hard for me to do anything else. And plus, I'm trying to, you know, read and watch anime and actually have content to talk about during live streams. That'd be nice. Yeah, Ristorante Paradiso is a sort of, I believe, boys' love-ish anime series. You know, a lot of cute guys at a restaurant is Ristorante Paradiso, but from what I've heard, like, there's no, you know, nobody is hot for anyone else. It's just a bunch of hot guys at a restaurant, from what I've heard. Welcome, Blue Dragon. Just caught us at the end of the cooking segment while we're waiting for this mac and cheese to maybe work. Maybe come together, maybe not, maybe it'll fail, but we're learning. I should do something where Maybe I'll split this out as its own episode and do something where I document what we've done. And I say, okay, today we combined these things and this is how it worked out. So we can kind of reference that and record, okay, these are the good ways of making these things. I don't know. I certainly feel like I should document this in some way. Science is a matter of writing things down. And then it's science, right? All right, let's check on our mac and cheese. Hasn't been very long, but we'll check on it. Ah, yeah, that's starting to come together. Come together right now over me. All right, let's get some hot water in our pan. That's not hot water. That's hot water. And we'll let that soak for a little bit. There we go. Otherwise, it'll be really hard to get it out of that pan. And meanwhile, we'll just move some things out of the way. And I've also got some, frankly, self-improvement projects. Like, I'm trying to practice speech so I'm clearer and I'm not slurring my words constantly. Which I'm sure you guys would appreciate, but just this is an aspect of my talking that I've had for 40 years, and that it's really hard for me to change. But it would make me a much better presenter, a much better host, frankly, if I were speaking more eloquently, more clearly. So something I'm working on. I do feel bad that I'm doing these shows and I'm so often throwing things at you with a voice that just isn't very professional, if you will. So I apologize for that. There we go. Cooking Mama themed 5-minute anime series show. It's a great idea. A little anime character with a scarf, and here's how I do this. There's a series of manga about how to cook and how to cook like Japanese food. Something like the Manga Guide to Cooking, something along those lines. And that's actually, I may have a copy. Yeah. The manga cookbook. Cute. And it's about characters learning to make different Japanese things. So like taco sausage. Whoa. And here's how to do it. And then you end up with those sausages. Nice art too. So manga cookbook I like. It goes through a bunch of standard stuff. There's some color stuff as well. They say how many recipes there are in here. No, they do not. But there are certainly dozens and dozens of recipes in here. Tonkatsu, how to make teriyaki sauce, how to make teriyaki chicken. So this would actually be a good book to go through at some point and try all this. This might be another show. Instead of talking about just cooking random things, I'll do something out of this book every day or every week, not every day. And if it fails, we'll try again. It might be fun. I might have to disassemble the book, or buy a copy and then, cut out the pages because there's just no way I can hold this and do a show. But that might be fun. have to lean a little bit here. Yeah, that might be the new Otaku no Cooking segment. I wonder how cheap this is. It was $15 retail back in the day, so it's probably $10 on Amazon. I can afford that. I can afford an extra copy to tear apart. Like I said, cute art. As I recall, the translation is rough at times. Oh, actually, now that I'm reading this, it's fine. Yeah, actually, this is very good translation. No problem with that. Cool. Yeah, that'll be fun. I'll have to do some cooking or some. I'll have to buy some stuff ahead of time. You know, make sure I have apples for this and chicken for that. So that'd be cool. Tamago tomodachi, egg friends. Oh, this uses small eggs. Interesting. Cucumber, carrot, and black sesame seeds. Cute. Hard boiled one, it looks like. Yep. And I might just edit some of these things. Like, I have a way of hard cooking eggs that is much simpler than putting it in a boiling pot, and they'll go around and break and so forth. It's a little more foolproof. And there are lots of things online for how to hard cook eggs, right? You don't have to follow that recipe exactly. Cool. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Onigiri. Nori. Ooh, how to make onigiri. That's worth doing. I do have some nori. Nice. Good idea. Yeah, you'd hope it's a good translation. Well, as I recall, like I remember the recipes themselves being clear, but a lot of the commentary being kind of weirdly phrased. But this is fine. Rice burgers. I wonder if this requires Japanese-style rice. Yeah, Japanese-style white rice is what you gotta get. Okay, so I'll be aware of that. Probably end up getting a bag. I found a small bag of Japanese-style rice in my local grocery store, but not huge amounts. Right, I'd have to do that. So I'll probably just make a separate trip to a more specialty grocery store to get that. Okay. Let's look at our mac and cheese. What do we got? I mean, it's still fairly soupy. It's soupy. I don't know if that's a bad thing or not. So, I mean, I'll show you. That's exactly what we have, right? It's exactly what it looked like before. So I'll put it in there a little longer. Excuse me, just catching my throat. Then we'll take it out and look at it. Definitely feel like it's been in there for a good amount of time. Yeah, this is a fun book. So let's see what we've got in here. We've got sausage, steamed rice, Naruto rolls, yay! Ham, cheese, and nori. Nikumaki, meat rolls. The aforementioned rice burgers. Bento. How to make various kinds of bento. Oshinko. So chopped cabbage and cucumber, I think. How to make miso soup. Wow. miso paste, dashi stock, tofu, and green onion. Yeah, there we go. Tamagoyaki. I made tamagoyaki before. Sushi rice. California roll. I made a California roll. Cool. Tonkatsu. Gyudon. Beef bowl. And what else? Other kinds of cooked udon. So those standard things. Ah, dango. Nice. The 3-color dango. So, you know, these guys. Learn how to make those. That's pretty cool. Getting hungry now. And Anko buns. Not sure what that is. Anko paste. Oh, I think this is what you use for steamed buns and such. Interesting. Yeah, almost nothing on desserts, because desserts are kind of a separate thing. You know, that's not really cooking. It is, what do you call it? Wow, what did I tip of my head? It is confectionery. Really cooking. And you don't have dessert with a meal. You might have dessert separately. You might have dessert at the end of dinner, but it's not really part of dinner. It's kind of the special thing you have. It's different. Does Japanese rice taste different than from other rice? Yes, subtly. You know, it's not like you're going to eat it and think, oh my gosh, this doesn't taste anything like rice. You know, it's rice. But there is a difference in flavor, and I can't really describe it. It's just, you know, it's kind of like the difference between, say, a chicken hot dog and a beef hot dog, right? Where, I mean, if you tasted chicken and beef before, you're like, yeah, I taste kind of a chickeny bit here and a beefy bit here, but it's just variations on the same basic flavor profile. So yeah, but it's definitely different, and they cook differently. I mean, the rice cooks differently, and it sticks differently. So it's Japanese rice is more about the consistency and the stickiness of that rice. And you really can't make sushi with traditional rice because it doesn't stick the same way. So gotta live with that. It is just different. All right. So I think I am now comfortable with pronouncing this particular recipe failed. Busted. But I'm going to go ahead and let me show you what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and let this cool and see if it congeals. If we get a nice congealed mac and cheese out of this, great. If not, okay, this didn't work out so well. And maybe next time I'll try half as much milk as everything else. Maybe that'll work correctly. So we'll just have to see. But this is a good experiment. I'm learning things. We're all learning things here about how these things work. All right, that will do. I'm just going to stir this up a little bit, which normally you wouldn't want to do with the mac and cheese, but this is so wet. Yeah, okay. Fair enough. All right, thank you all very much for joining me. As always, this Friday, we'll be back next week with more fun stuff. And I will see you all then. Take care and have a great week. Bye-bye.